The termination email did not even contain my name in the salutation line. It was just a cold two-sentence paragraph centered in the middle of a stark white browser window. Your services are no longer required effective immediately. Please refrain from accessing company systems. No phone call from human resources, no exit interview, and no explanation whatsoever. Just like that, 18 years of my life, my late-night engineering marathons, and the permanent nerve damage in my right wrist were wiped clean from the corporate ledger with a single click from an executive who probably could not explain what an application programming interface was if his life depended on it. That was 6 weeks ago. Now, at 49 years old, I found myself sitting at my kitchen table at 2 in the afternoon, eating stale cereal from a coffee mug and staring at a laptop screen with 3 missing keycaps. The sweatpants I wore had smelled like deadline panic and unwashed disappointment for 3 days straight. Every job posting I clicked through on the local tech boards read like a sick parody. Tech companies were all searching for 25-year-old rockstar developers with 15 years of cloud infrastructure experience who were eager to work 80 hours a week in exchange for cheap ping-pong tables and stock options that would likely be diluted into oblivion. I slammed the lid of my battered ThinkPad down with a hollow thud. My phone vibrated on the laminate countertop. I ignored it, assuming it was another automated recruiter email offering a temporary contract at half my previous salary. But then my eyes caught the glowing sidebar headline on a financial news website I frequently doom-scrolled. The red breaking news ticker made my pulse spike. A $650 million tech acquisition was suddenly called off during final due diligence due to a catastrophic intellectual property ownership crisis. I blinked, leaned closer to the screen, and read the paragraph 3 times. The article did not name the specific internal assets involved, but it cited an anonymous source close to the buyer, stating that the seller had failed to verify clear title to the core software stack. The seller was Synapse Technologies, my former employer, the very enterprise that had tossed me out like garbage 6 weeks before their long-awaited, champagne-soaked payday. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a direct text message from Nate Miller, a junior back-end engineer I'd mentored for the last 3 years. The message was rushed and frantic. They are losing their minds on the executive floor. Something is wrong with the original platform foundation code. Please tell me you still have your old architecture logs. I stared at the glowing blue text on my phone. My heart began hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. The original platform code. I did not text Nate back immediately. Instead, I stood up, walked over to my desk drawer, and pulled out a dusty black external hard drive. It contained a local mirror of the foundational codebase from 7 years ago, backed up before legal instituted the mandatory corporate wiping policy. My fingers flew across the keyboard by pure muscle memory as I booted up my terminal and began pulling up the legacy repositories. Line by line, directory by directory, I began digging through the digital bedrock of the platform I had built from scratch. Everything looked standard until I reached the core load distribution module. Tucked deep inside the initialization logic was a hidden inline comment left 7 years ago. The comment read, "Patent application filed personally per Ephraim instructions." Better safe than sorry. A cold sweat broke out across the back of my neck. Ephraim Bradley had been my brilliant, fiercely paranoid mentor who served as vice president of engineering before. The current corporate regime pushed him out. I remembered him leaning over my cubicle years ago, waving a thick stack of legal paper. I opened my web browser and navigated directly to the United States Patent and Trademark Office public database. In the search bar, I entered the algorithm parameters and executed the query. The page loaded slowly, progress bar hanging at 90% before finally popping open. There it was, in bold capital letters. Patent US 9,842,150. Title, Adaptive Load Distribution in Decentralized Modular Architectures. I scrolled down to the inventor details, my hand shaking so violently the mouse cursor jittered across the screen. Primary inventor, Daniel Prescott. Not Synapse Technologies, not the chief technology officer, not the corporate holding entity. Just my name, Daniel Prescott, with my private residential address listed as the primary assignee, filing date, 7 years ago. The exact year Ephraim had been forced out. The exact year I had signed what I thought were routine engineering documentation forms. I sat back in my chair, staring at the screen in absolute disbelief. The $650 million merger between Synapse Technologies and Aegis Dynamics was collapsing because the central framework of the entire product line did not belong to the company at all. It belonged to a 49-year-old developer sitting in his sweatpants with $18 in his checking account. They had thrown me out to maximize their executive payout margins, unaware that the very foundation of their empire was built on land I owned outright. The memory came flooding back with the harsh, unforgiving clarity of fluorescent office lighting and stale break-room coffee. 7 years ago, Synapse Technologies had been undergoing a hostile corporate restructuring. The founding venture investors had installed Chadwick Montgomery, a 39-year-old executive whose entire professional career consisted of slashing engineering payroll, liquidating employee pension funds, and slapping glossy corporate logos on dying software applications. Ephraim Bradley had seen the writing on the wall long before anyone else in the building. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, Ephraim had barged into my claustrophobic cubicle, throwing a thick manila folder onto my desk, hard enough to knock over my cold cup of coffee. He had looked around nervously, ensuring no executive handlers were lingering in the hallway, before leaning down with his voice barely above a harsh whisper. "Dan, you are filing this patent application today," he had said flatly, pointing directly at the signature lines near the bottom of the USPTO disclosure document. I had laughed nervously, assuming it was some kind of elaborate joke. "Ephraim, this is core research logic for our next-generation distributed cluster framework. Corporate legal and compliance will throw a massive fit if I file anything without their internal review team signing off on it first." Ephraim had grabbed my shoulder, his grip surprisingly iron-tight. "Listen to me very carefully, Dan," he urged, his gray eyes flinty with intense focus. "Chadwick and his venture capital vultures are not here to build a sustainable engineering enterprise. They are here to fatten up the carcass, strip out every ounce of equity, and sell the remaining husk to the highest bidder on Wall Street. When they decide to sell, they will step on your neck, claim your blood and sweat as their own corporate genius, and throw you into the street without a single penny of severance. You wrote every single line of this load distribution mathematics on your own personal laptop on weekends before they updated the blanket employee intellectual property assignment agreements." He had reached into his coat pocket and handed me a cashier check for $850 to cover the United States Patent and Trademark Office filing fees out of pocket. "You file this under your personal legal name, Daniel Prescott, using your home residential address as the primary assignee. No corporate co-authors, no executive credit lines, and absolutely no internal corporate routing. Under federal patent law, specifically 35 U.S.C., Section 261, patent ownership vests strictly in the individual inventor unless a valid, explicit written assignment is formally recorded with the Patent Office. This is your hurricane insurance, Dan. Smart engineers do not buy insurance after the roof blows off in a storm. They buy it before the sky turns gray." At the time, I had assumed Ephraim was suffering from acute executive burnout and chronic paranoia, but I respected him too much to argue. I signed the USPTO forms, submitted the independent filing, paid the registration fees, and promptly forgot about the entire matter as the daily grind of 70-hour work weeks, endless bug tickets, and corporate gaslighting swallowed my life whole. Now, sitting in my quiet apartment 7 years later, I realized Ephraim had not been paranoid at all. He had been constructing a reinforced nuclear fallout shelter, while the rest of the executive team was busy buying luxury sports cars and planning their post-merger retirement estates. My pulse thrummed in my ears with terrifying speed. For the first time in 6 weeks, the suffocating cloud of despair, powerlessness, and humiliation lifted from my chest. I was not just another discarded line item on an executive spreadsheet. I was holding the single load-bearing pillar of a $650 million corporate acquisition. I pulled out my phone, located an old contact sheet from 5 years ago, and dialed Ephraim Bradley's personal telephone number. He had retired to a quiet coastal town in Florida shortly after being pushed out of Synapse Technologies by Chadwick. The line rang 4 times before a gravelly, deeply familiar voice answered, accompanied by the faint background sound of crashing ocean waves and distant seagulls. I was wondering how many years it would take for Chadwick to run headfirst into that landmine. Ephraim said calmly without even offering a formal greeting. I let out a breathless, disbelieving laugh. You knew all along? I hoped those greedy corporate suits would get cocky enough to overlook due diligence. Ephraim grunted through the receiver. Tell me, Dan, did Chadwick fire you before or after he announced the $650 million buyout to the tech press? 6 weeks before, I replied, my voice tightening with lingering resentment. 2 lines in an automated system email, no severance pay, no health insurance continuation, no thank you. Ephraim snorted with cold contempt. Classic Chadwick move. Clear out the senior engineering talent right before the deal closes so the executive board can split the equity pool among themselves. But he forgot one golden rule of enterprise software. Never kick out the architect who holds the master keys to the vault. What should I do now, Ephraim? I asked, my hands sweating against the phone casing. They are going to realize what happened any minute now. Listen to me, Dan, Ephraim said, his tone turning into cold steel. Do not answer any direct calls from Chadwick. Do not reply to human resources. Do not sign a single piece of paper, no matter how much money they wave in your face. You do not negotiate with corporate vultures when you hold the high ground. You dictate terms. I do not even have a legal counsel, Ephraim, I admitted. You do now, he answered promptly. I am texting you the contact details for Victoria Cross. She is a top-tier intellectual property litigation attorney based in San Francisco. We used to call her the Barracuda during our early engineering days. She eats corporate non-disclosure agreements for breakfast and drinks venture capital blood for lunch. Call her immediately and tell her Ephraim sent you. My phone began ringing at exactly 8:12 the next morning. The caller identification displayed a San Francisco corporate landline. I recognized the phone number immediately. It was the direct line from the executive suite at Synapse Technologies headquarters. I let it ring 3 times, taking a slow, deep breath to steady my nerves before clicking the speakerphone button. Daniel Prescott, I said calmly. Dan, my man, came a loud, aggressively friendly voice through the speaker. It was the distinct, polished cadence of Chadwick Montgomery, CEO of Synapse Technologies. He sounded like a used car salesman trying to sell a flooded vehicle with a fresh coat of wax. I know it has been a few weeks since your departure, Dan. I just wanted to reach out personally and say that I deeply regret how cold that administrative automated email came across. Human resources made a massive miscommunication error on that one, buddy. I kept my mouth shut, letting the silence hang heavy on the line. Anyway, Chadwick continued, his tone shifting into smooth, rehearsed charm. We were conducting a routine audit of our intellectual property files for the upcoming transaction with Aegis Dynamics. You know how tedious those legal checklists can be. We noticed a small clerical oversight regarding an old patent filing for the load balancer module. It looks like your name was accidentally left on the primary inventor line without the corporate assignment endorsement attached. He let out a short, fake laugh. Obviously, it is just a minor administrative glitch from years ago. We have drawn up a quick assignment release document. If you can swing by the office today to sign it, we are prepared to issue you a retroactive severance bonus of $50,000 and offer you an exclusive title as Principal Technical Consultant. Clean everything up, water under the bridge, right? I stared at the wall, feeling a cold, sharp anger burning through my veins. $50,000 out of a $650 million deal. A breadcrumb thrown from the banquet table to quiet the peasant. Chadwick, I said, keeping my voice utterly devoid of emotion. This call is being recorded for legal documentation purposes. Do not contact me directly again. All future communications regarding patent US 9,842,150 will be handled strictly by my legal counsel. Wait, Dan, hold on. Chadwick began, his slick composure faltering. I ended the call and blocked his number. 2 hours later, I was sitting in the high-rise office of Victoria Cross in downtown San Francisco. Victoria was 51 years old. wearing a tailored charcoal suit with sharp lapels and eyes that possessed the chilling focus of a tactical commander. She reviewed my patent documentation, the USPTO grant certificate, and my original employment agreement from 18 years ago. A slow, razor-thin smile spread across her face as she laid the papers down on her mahogany desk. "This is absolute poetry, Daniel," Victoria said, tapping her fountain pen against the glass table. "Your original employment contract predates their updated intellectual property assignment clauses by 3 whole years. Under federal law, 35 U.S.C., Section 261, patent rights belong exclusively to the named inventor unless an explicit, unambiguous written assignment was executed and recorded with the Patent Office. You never executed an assignment for this patent. What is their legal position?" I asked. "They have no legal position," Victoria replied flatly. "They built a $650 million software suite on top of an algorithm they have zero legal license to use. Every single day they run that software platform, they are committing willful patent infringement under federal law." That afternoon, Victoria took immediate aggressive action. She filed an official public notice of sole ownership with the United States Patent and Trademark Office and dispatched a formal legal notice directly to the General Counsel of Aegis Dynamics, the acquiring entity. The letter clearly stated that Synapse Technologies possessed no legal right, title, or interest in the core architecture of the platform, and that any commercial deployment by Aegis Dynamics post-acquisition would result in immediate federal injunctive relief and treble damages for willful infringement. The reaction from Synapse Technologies was instantaneous. By 4 o'clock that afternoon, a courier delivered a frantic letter from Synapse Human Resources Manager Deborah Jenkins. The letter accused me of violating company confidentiality, misappropriating internal trade secrets, and threatening legal action unless I surrendered the patent within 24 hours. Victoria read the letter, snorted with utter amusement, and tossed it directly into her wastebasket. "Standard scare tactic from an executive team that is drowning in terror," she said. "They are bluffing with an empty hand." At 6 in the evening, Victoria's phone rang. It was Malcolm Thorne, Senior Vice President and General Counsel for Aegis Dynamics. He was calling off the record. Victoria put the call on speakerphone so I could listen. "Miss Cross," Malcolm Thorne said, his voice clipped and pragmatic, "we have reviewed the documentation you submitted regarding patent US 9,842,150. Our intellectual property audit team has confirmed that Daniel Prescott is indeed the sole title holder. Synapse Technologies has materially misrepresented their asset portfolio during merger negotiation." "What is Aegis Dynamics' position?" Victoria asked coolly. "We are pausing all transaction discussions with Synapse Technologies' executive board," Thorne replied. "Furthermore, Aegis Dynamics would like to invite Mr. Prescott to a private, confidential conference at our regional headquarters tomorrow morning. We want to discuss an independent, direct licensing framework for his patent architecture without Synapse in the room." The main conference room at Synapse Technologies headquarters was built to intimidate. Floor-to-ceiling glass windows offered a panoramic view of the San Francisco Bay, surrounding a 20-foot polished mahogany table that had seen dozens of high-stakes corporate negotiations. But on this Friday morning, the atmosphere inside the room felt less like an executive suite and more like a courtroom awaiting a death sentence. I sat on one side of the long table, flanked by Victoria Cross, who looked impeccably calm in her tailored navy blazer. Across from us sat Chadwick Montgomery, looking haggard with dark circles under his bloodshot eyes. Alongside Human Resources Manager Deborah Jenkins and 2 senior corporate defense attorneys, whose aggressive postures could not hide the sheer panic radiating from their faces. Chadwick tried to summon his trademark executive charisma, leaning forward with an uncomfortable, strained smile. "Dan, thank you for agreeing to sit down with us. I think we can all agree that things escalated far too quickly over the past 48 hours. We are all professionals here. Synapse Technologies built the commercial ecosystem around your load balancing algorithm. We provided the infrastructure, the marketing, and the operational scale. It is only fair that we find a mutually beneficial resolution so the deal with Aegis Dynamics can proceed. One of his attorneys slid a thick leather-bound folder across the polished table toward Victoria. "We have drafted a comprehensive settlement agreement," the attorney stated, attempting to sound authoritative. "Synapse Technologies is prepared to offer Mr. Prescott a lump sum retroactive compensation package of $500,000, alongside a full release of all potential corporate claims, in exchange for the immediate execution of a full patent assignment transfer back to Synapse." I looked down at the paper sitting in front of me. $500,000 was more money than I had seen in my checking account in my entire life. 6 weeks ago, when I was sitting at my kitchen table calculating how many months I could pay rent before running out of savings, that figure would have seemed like an astronomical fortune. Chadwick leaned in, his voice dropping into a desperate, persuasive whisper. "Think about it, Dan. $500,000 cash. You can retire comfortably, buy a house, do whatever you want. No long, expensive courtroom battles. Just sign the line and we all walk away winners." I looked Chadwick straight in the eyes. The room fell dead silent as the hum of the air conditioning seemed to amplify. 18 years, Chadwick," I said quietly. My voice did not tremble. It was steady, anchored by 18 years of uncompensated sacrifice. I worked 18 years for this company. I worked 80-hour weeks when we were launching the first cluster. I came into the office at 3 in the morning when the servers crashed. When my mother was undergoing chemotherapy 4 years ago, I brought my laptop into her hospital room and coded through the night because you told me the quarterly deadline could not be moved by a single day. Debra Jenkins shifted uncomfortably in her chair, looking down at her notepad. "And 6 weeks ago," I continued, "you did not even have the courage to call me into your office. You had an automated system send me a 2-sentence email telling me my services were no longer required so you could shrink payroll costs and boost your personal equity share right before a $650 million buyout. You treated me like a broken piece of office furniture that could be thrown into a dumpster once it served its purpose." "Dan, please," Chadwick stammered, his face flushing crimson. "I am not finished," I said, raising my hand slightly. "You think this is about $500,000 because your entire worldview begins and ends with cash payouts and executive bonuses. But you forgot that software is not built by spreadsheets. Software is built by human beings." Victoria reached into her briefcase, pulled out a single stamped legal document, and slid it calmly across the table, stopping directly in front of Chadwick. "What is this?" Chadwick attorney demanded, snatching the paper up. "That," Victoria announced with razor-sharp precision, "is a formal notice of exclusive option agreement executed 2 hours ago between Daniel Prescott and Aegis Dynamics. Aegis has officially terminated their acquisition merger agreement with Synapse Technologies due to material breach of contract and fraudulent disclosure. They have instead entered into a direct, exclusive patent licensing arrangement directly with my client." Chadwick stared at the paper, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. The color drained completely from his face, leaving him looking ghost white. You cannot do this," Chadwick gasped, his voice cracking with hysteria. "The entire company framework relies on that patent. Without Aegis buying Synapse, our valuation drops to zero. The board will destroy me." "Then I suggest you prepare your defense for the board, Chadwick," Victoria replied coolly, gathering her files and standing up. "Because under federal law, 35 U.S.C. Section 261, Daniel Prescott is the sole legal owner of the technology. Aegis Dynamics is deploying his platform independently. Synapse Technologies no longer has a product, no longer has a buyer, and no longer has a future." I stood up beside Victoria, buttoned my jacket, and looked down at the broken executive across the table. "Good luck with your due diligence audit, Chadwick," I said. We walked out of the conference room, leaving the corporate vultures to devour each other in the wreckage of their own greed. 3 weeks after the tense confrontation in the glass conference room, the final legal ink dried on my new commercial reality. Aegis Dynamics executed a master patent licensing agreement for patent US 9,842,150. The comprehensive contract included an upfront licensing fee of $4,500,000 paid directly into my personal bank account, alongside a guaranteed annual royalty rate of 2.5% on all global enterprise deployments utilizing the load distribution architecture. Furthermore, Aegis Dynamics created a brand new executive position engineered specifically to match my skill set and personal boundaries: Principal Systems Architect and Intellectual Property Advisor. The position came with complete remote autonomy, a generous six-figure base salary, full health coverage, and a strict 40-hour workweek cap written directly into my contract by Victoria Cross. Meanwhile, the systemic fallout at Synapse Technologies was catastrophic, immediate, and completely unrecoverable. As soon as official news broke across major financial channels that the $650 million corporate acquisition had collapsed due to fatal intellectual property defects, Synapse private stock valuation plummeted by 95% in a matter of days. The board of directors launched an emergency forensic investigation into Chadwick Montgomery and his executive inner circle. It quickly emerged that Chadwick had intentionally concealed the missing patent assignment documentation from the due diligence auditors in a frantic, illegal gamble to rush the acquisition through. Before the fatal error was uncovered, within 10 days of the audit findings, the board fired Chadwick Montgomery for gross breach of fiduciary duty, securities fraud, and intentional misrepresentation. He was ousted from the building by security guards, without a single penny of severance pay. His stock options were completely canceled, and several primary institutional investors filed a massive class action lawsuit against him personally to recover their lost capital. Human Resources Manager Deborah Jenkins and the entire corporate legal team were summarily replaced as the company initiated emergency bankruptcy proceedings to liquidate its remaining physical assets. On a bright, clear Monday morning in early autumn, I stepped into my new private office at Aegis Dynamics Regional Headquarters overlooking San Francisco Bay. The workspace was spacious, quiet, and bathed in natural sunlight filtering through floor-to-ceiling windows. There were no noisy ping-pong tables, no hollow corporate slogans plastered across the walls, and no toxic hustle culture. Just a custom mahogany standing desk, a powerful dual-monitor workstation, and an uninterrupted, calming view of the Pacific Ocean horizon. As I set down my fresh ceramic mug of artisanal dark roast coffee, my personal mobile phone vibrated softly on the desk. The screen displayed an unknown caller number with a San Francisco area code. A second later, a voicemail notification popped up on the display. It was a 62-second recorded message. I clicked the audio file and listened on speakerphone. "Dan." "Please," came Chadwick's voice, hoarse, trembling, and completely stripped of his former arrogant corporate polish. "I am begging you to call me back. The investors are foreclosing on everything I own. My house is being placed under a legal lien, and the Securities and Exchange Commission is opening a formal criminal inquiry. If you could just speak to Aegis Legal Counsel, tell them we had an informal verbal agreement years ago. I will sign over whatever percentage of equity you want. Please, Dan, you are destroying my entire family life." I paused the audio playback, feeling neither burning anger nor vengeful malice, just a profound, quiet clarity. Chadwick had spent his entire executive career treating dedicated human beings as disposable numbers on a balance sheet, believing that corporate power and wealthy investors exempted him from basic human ethics and federal law. He had not been destroyed by my legal counterstrike. He had been destroyed by his own unbridled greed and his arrogant assumption that quiet, hard-working people would never stand up to claim what was rightfully theirs. I opened my secure messaging application, selected the audio file, and forwarded the recording directly to Ephraim Bradley in Florida with a short text caption: "The storm has officially cleared. Welcome to retirement, my friend." A few seconds later, Ephraim replied with a photo of himself sitting on a sunny Florida beach, raising a cold glass of iced tea with a wide, triumphant smile. I tapped the delete icon on my phone screen, permanently purging Chadwick's frantic voicemail from my device without saving a backup copy. I picked up my coffee mug, took a slow, satisfying sip of the dark roast, and turned toward my dual monitor setup. The code editor on my screen was open, displaying clean, elegant system architecture waiting for my next command. For the first time in 18 years, I was not writing code to enrich a greedy corporate board or inflate an executive bonus pool. I was writing software on my own terms, with complete creative control, and with my name permanently etched into the foundation. I smiled, adjusted my ergonomic chair, and got back to work.